Today I will show you the digestive system of the cat. Here I am pointing to the abdominal cavity of the cat. Superior to that is the thoracic cavity where the heart and lung is located. And more inferiorly down here would be the pelvic cavity. And where the head is would be the cranial cavity. I've made a H incision to open the abdominal wall, and you can see that it's an H shape by this configuration. Here's my H. So I open the flap, and you can see some of the features which we will review. Here's the liver. Down here you can see the urinary bladder, and this skirt which covers the small intestine is the greater omenta, and under the greater omenta is the small intestine. Okay, here's the cat. I've moved in a little closer to the liver and to show you some other structures. Here you can see the diaphragm, which separates the abdominal cavity from the thoracic cavity. Again, here's the diaphragm, and it kind of goes all the way back here, and that facilitates breathing, which you will go in more details when you do the respiratory system. Then you have here a round ligament, which is called the falciform ligament, and it divides the liver in half. And the liver has, in the cat, we have 5 lobes. Like I said, the falciform ligament divides the liver in half. So this would be the right side, because here's the midpoint, and this is the left side. So you have with the liver, like I said before, this is the right side, and this is the left side of the liver. You have the right medial lobe. This is a fold where you can see the gallbladder. Here's the gallbladder, which stores the bile. And here is the left medial lobe, and this is the left lateral lobe. Don't mistake this crease as divided in the right lobe. Both of these are considered the right medial lobe, because the lateral lobe is way down here, as you can see here. So this would be the right lateral lobe. And I mentioned that this is the greater omenta, which is attached to the stomach, which, as I move it here, you can see under here is the stomach. Here's the stomach. And as you can see, it's attached to the greater curvature of the stomach. Here's the stomach, greater curvature. And okay, I've refracted the greater omenta so you can see the other organs of the digestive system. Again, here's the stomach, and it's hard to see it here, but the esophagus goes superiorly, and after the stomach, which is here, you have the C-shaped part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum. And the base of the duodenum, you could see the pancreas, which is here, here. It's easily confused if you don't pay attention to the texture. The duodenum is kind of smooth and glossy, while the pancreas has a bread type texture. Okay, and I rearranged things a little bit. You can see the duodenum, the jejunum, or some people say jejunum, and the membrane which keeps it from tangling up. It's called the mesentery proper. Again, you can see the membrane, the serous membrane, there and there. And if you follow it to its end, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. Here's the colon. And if you see the distal part of the small intestine is the ileum. Let's see if I can find a nice, oh, here we go. So here's the colon. And jejunum is the curly part, but the distal part of it is the ileum. And there's a valve here called the Ileocecal Valve, which separates the large intestine from the small intestine. And in humans, you have the ascendant, transverse, and descendant, but we don't make that distinction in cats. This cat is a female because you can see the uterine horn, which are this structure here. Let me just move the camera a little bit. There. And here's the urinary bladder down here. My finger's on it. Okay, here is the urinary bladder, and it's anchored by these two lateral structures called the lateral ligament of the urinary bladder. There is another ligament which is attached to the midpoint of the urinary bladder called the medial suspensory ligament of the urinary bladder. There. So again, here's the lateral ligament, because it's on the sides of the urinary bladder, and the medial suspensory ligament, which is in the middle part. It's kind of stretched right now because I folded over one of those flaps when I did the incision. I mentioned that here's the duodenum, and there's a membrane there. So that membrane is called the mesoduodenum. If you see my finger on the opposite side, that's the mesoduodenum. If I go to the colon, which is here, this larger part of the alimentary canal, is the colon, and the membrane. I'll stick my finger on it there so you can see it there. And that's anchoring the colon to the dorsal wall. That's the mesocolon. There's a mesorectum also, but the rectum is hidden in here, which we don't dissect, and it's hard to see. Just know that that's another mesentery that you have to be aware of. Okay, there's a couple more structures that you have to know. I just brought this up from the back. This is the spleen. And the spleen is an accessory organ which involves part of your lymphatic system. It functions in multiple functions. And you can see it on the side here. It's often ruptured because it's not protected by the rib cage, and it's very vascular. So you may hear about people having their spleen removed because of injury, trauma, like car accidents. Here is the stomach and the greater menta, which is attached to the greater curvature of the stomach. And there's a part of the greater menta which attaches between two organs, the spleen and the stomach. So they call it the Gastro-Splenic ligament. So this area here, if on an exam they point to here, this would be the Gastro-Splenic ligament. If they point to here, that would be the greater menta. The uterine horn, which are this structure here. Let me just move the camera a little bit. There. And here's the urinary bladder down here. My finger's on it. Okay, here is the V-shape urine horn. In cats, the babies are in the horn, which allows them to have multiple births. And the membrane that anchors it to the dorsal wall is called the broad ligament. I'll hold one of the horns out. This is called the broad ligament here and here. And then there's a perpendicular part of it here.